Did you know that people fear public speaking more than they fear death? It's a scientific fact. As anyone who's ever had to write a speech before knows, it is such a hassle. You know, you got to think of how you're going to start, what you're going to say. Do you start with a hello, it's nice to be here everyone? Or do you leap straight into your best Rodney Dangerfield impression? I don't get no respect at all. The guy running this thing asked me to speak here. He said keep it short. I said, what is this, my urology exam? I get no respect at all. And of course, as we all know, the hardest speech to write of them all is a wedding speech. I mean, you got to speak about the people you love. What, are you going to tell them how much they mean to you and how, you know, that you wish them a happy marriage? No, that's speaking from the heart and writing about people you care about. Pfft, gross. No, thank you. Now that's a fast car. Instead of speaking from the heart, you can just use the book that I'm going to talk about today. Come on, focus. Wedding Speeches, a book of example speeches by Gordon Stretch. Kia ora everybody, welcome back to the Cam Hall Variety Show, the internet's lowest performing New Zealand created show, a badge I wear with honour. In my last video I covered a book called Wedding Etiquette, and this is a book I found in a charity shop, and right next to that book I found this one. And, you know, I mean, come on, I just had to get it. I mean, just look at that face. Aww. I want to be smiling like that. This book was published in 1991. And unfortunately, I wasn't able to find any information on Gordon Stretch. I guess he wasn't a New York best time seller like every other author. Now, I've been the best man exactly one time in my life, and that was for my brother's wedding. And so, of course, I had to give a speech. And reading over this book, I'm just so bummed out that I didn't have this with me at the time. I mean, all I did was write from the heart and tell my brother how much he meant to me and that I wished him a long and happy marriage. Disgusting. I think once we start going through this book, you're going to see exactly why I wish I had this book at the time. I really should have given a speech from this. It's pretty banging material. Enough yapping. Let's just get the flippin' frick into it. Upon opening this book, we see it was dedicated to Mum and Dad. Before we get into this, Mama, Papa, I'm so sorry. Well, actually, since they were older than Gordon, they were probably more sexist than he was. They probably love this book then. Okay, let me read from the intro first before we get into any of that. A wedding is an occasion that should be enjoyed by all, even those giving speeches. But many of us have never spoken to a gathering before, and the thought of standing in front of a group of people fills us with horror. To overcome this, I've collected together 65 example speeches. One or other of these is bound to suit your wedding, whether it's the first wedding of a young couple or the second time around for two people with adult children. Hell yeah, dude, we even got that divorce representation. Where are all my sinners at? There are example speeches for the 3 traditional wedding speakers, 12 for the bride's father, 15 for the bridegroom, and 15 for the best man. At some weddings, the bride's father may not be able to attend. He may be ill or have left home or have died. That's true, dying does make it pretty hard to attend a wedding, but not impossible. So I've included 8 speeches that other members of the bride's family, the bride's uncle, grandfather, or brother could give on his behalf. Okay, we got the bride's father, bridegroom, best man, uncle, grandfather, brother. Still not seeing any speeches for the ladies yet, but let's read on. Going beyond the usual 3 speeches, it is becoming increasingly common for others to have their say, including the ladies. Look guys, I know it's not ideal, but there are some others that want to have their say at the wedding. The women. Okay, so there are speeches for any women who might want to speak at this wedding, like maybe the bride who's getting married. However, they're put into the afterthought category. Oh, I mean the extras. The extras category. When composing your speech, do consider the feelings of the people about whom you are talking. Make sure you don't say anything that could be misinterpreted, unless that's your intention. Your speech should make everyone laugh, including the person who might be the butt of your jokes. Now, I might be alone in this, please feel free to let me know in the comments. I don't think that every speech, especially a wedding speech for that matter, needs to make everybody laugh. Now, I'm not saying that I'm against the odd joke or pun or roast or two. What I am saying though, is I don't want my wedding to turn into My Drunk Uncle live at the Apollo, giving his take on things. I think that would just be best for everybody. Then we get into the order of the speeches. First up is the bride's father. Then comes the groom, who replies on behalf of his wife and himself. Then is the best man, who replies on behalf of the bridesmaids. I love that everyone is talking on behalf of the women, who, I mean, honestly, really have no business having their own voice. Am I right, boys?
Be sure to let me know your opinions in the comments below.
But since there's this newfangled thing going around called equality, then if any others are going to speak, they would usually speak now, you know, if they really have to. Okay, now to get into the speeches. Now, because there's so many speeches I want to get through, and so this video isn't an hour long, I've decided to pull some of my favourite quotes from some of the speeches, just to give you a little taste of what we're dealing with here. Most of the speeches are so long and waffly anyway, so I'm going to save you all that by serving you up only the best bits. The sexiest of the sexiest. The belle of the ball. And we're going to kick this thing off with speeches from the bride's father. But before we jump into it, I just want to show you the contents page to really give you a glimpse into how dated this book really is. The speeches are laid out based on what your present situation might be. So for example, if the bride is a waitress or a shop assistant, if she's a modern miss, who won't put up with any of your jokes. I can't say anything anymore. She's a secretary, a nurse, a junior school teacher, not a high school teacher. I mean, they can't do that. I mean, that's when school starts to really get complicated. They would just go right over their heads. She's the quiet type, a bank clerk, or already living with the groom. Yep, that's one speech with those 3 headings. Those sound like different categories of person. Don't worry, there is one here for the guys too. If the groom is a policeman, then this speech is for you. Okay, no more effing and jeffing around. Let's get into it. Whenever I've been thinking aloud about what I'd like to say on this happy occasion, the wife has kept chirping in with, "Don't forget to thank everyone for coming." There I am, trying to work out something grandiose to fasten your attention on my every word, and Mary has to deflate my mood with, "Don't forget to thank everyone for coming." Make sure it's mockingly as well, that's very important. Awesome. So, according to this book, the best way to start off a speech at your daughter's wedding is to immediately, straight off the bat, take a public dig at your wife. Just make sure you're taking notes here. Here's a great joke in the same speech. "With such all-round harmony, we feel thrice blessed." I don't think I've ever said that before. Thrice. It's surprising what you come out with in a speech. It sounds as if we've had triplets. Wow. Oh, because you said the word thrice? Yeah. Sure. Yeah, I think that speaks for itself. A word of caution to the bridegroom, however, will not go amiss. As an old married man, well, it can make you feel old, even if you are only middle-aged. I can speak from experience to this freshman here and warn him what he'll be up against. I didn't think it wise to say anything before he'd gone through with the wedding ceremony, you know, in case he changed his mind. There's something you'll have to learn to live with, John, because no man has yet found a remedy for it, and that is the unfathomable female mind. So true, my brother. What are they thinking? Who knows? We haven't cracked the code yet. What, am I going to communicate to her like she's an adult? Nah, miss me with all that. The next speech continues with kind of the same tone. "When it was just the 2 of us, Mary and myself, I felt outnumbered. A man does, you know. In any argument, and I do mean a friendly argument, not a quarrel, between man and wife, the man does feel outnumbered because the wife says twice as much as the man. John, I hope you're listening carefully.
Yeah.
This is being explained for your benefit.
Thank you, Daddy.
Now, the reason that the wife says twice as much as the man is because the wife carries on talking while the man is silently trying to fathom the logic of the statements that she's just made. It dawned on me too late in my married life that all the time I'd spent trying to find that elusive logic had been wasted. There wasn't any logic. Are we still giving a speech at a wedding, or are we at couples counselling? I do like this speech on page 20 where the father keeps mentioning someone called Dick Whitington. Like a lot. There's a lot of Dick in this speech. In the same speech, he makes a joke about being poor, but then immediately backpedals. "Mary and I are truly grateful to all of you for joining us in this happy celebration. And in spite of what I've said about my own plight, you needn't put too much money in my hat on your way out. You know, just whatever you can comfortably afford." I mean, really, I've exaggerated about being barren hard up. I've managed to pay for this wedding without a strain. Just in case you thought, you know, I had money troubles, which I don't. What I've actually done is I've managed to hoard all the wealth and land so that future generations don't get any, and then when they bring it up to me, I'll just call them lazy. Works for everyone. If you have a whirlwind engagement on your hands, then you could try this one on for size. Jane and John had only known each other for a short time before they became engaged. In many cases, when that happens and the couple lose no time in putting wedding arrangements into operation, it can be a good thing that churches are booked so far in advance that there's a long delay before the wedding can take place. It gives the couple a cooling off period during which one of them at least may conclude that getting married is a mistake. Oh, sorry, I don't want you to just misinterpret what I said, because that's not my intention. I don't mean that they conclude getting married at all is a mistake. I mean the couple in question marrying each other. Does Dad want them to get married? Don't worry though, only paragraphs later in the same speech, we have something to turn this all around. Well, time has passed and our confidence has been justified. The lovebirds have deepened their relation and it's bedrock firm. Oh, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have used that word. There was no innuendo intended. Bedrock. As in sex? Yeah, cool. Now on to the speech that I feel dates this book the most. If the bride is a modern miss already living with the groom. If ever I encounter an old friend that I haven't spoken to for a year or two and we're catching up on each other's lives, I'm invariably asked about Jane, with the implied question, what's she like? My short answer is that she's a typical modern miss. What volumes are spoken in that phrase. Some of you might be thinking, what a multitude of sins it covers. Hell yeah, man, I'm right there with you. When they try and have sex before marriage, or when they get pregnant out of wedlock, or, when they try and vote, or when they wear those jean shorts that shows off their knees. But I'm not going to be tactless enough to say that. That you just did. He further elaborates, I mean today's really with it teenage girl daubs herself up with half a pound of makeup, whizzes off to late night parties just when her parents are going to bed, changes her hairstyle and her boyfriend twice a week, and indulges in a marathon of telephone calls sponsored by her father. Her bedroom walls are covered with huge pictures of weird young men sporting guitars, and her idea of a quiet evening at home is to prance about to pop records played loudly enough to make her grandfather rejoice to discover that he's not totally deaf after all. One saving grace is that her skirts are at least short enough to show that she's wearing knickers. Dude, why are you checking for knickers for? Why are you looking at her knickers for? Why are you saying any of this at your daughter's wedding? Yeah, I think that's enough from Daddy, who I think it's safe to say nailed it. Now the next part isn't long enough to have its own little section, although there was this one great moment in a speech given by the bride's uncle where he says, quote, now I could reel off a long list of Jane's virtues. Please do that. Don't do whatever you're about to do. If only I knew of a skeleton in Jane's cupboard, I'd have something to get my tongue around. First of all, get my tongue around. Ooh. Second of all, why do you want some dirt on your knees? And why would you want to bring that up at a wedding? Specifically her wedding. To most, Jane appears as a prime example of a generous soul. What you might not know about Jane is that she's been committing tax fraud against the charity that she runs for the past 5 years. Lucky for her, no one's caught her so far. That's actually how they've managed to pay for the wedding. Now is the time for the groom to address everyone, on behalf of his betrothed, of course. Why would she need to speak at her own wedding? Most couples on their wedding day describe it as the happiest day of their lives. That worries me. It implies that as from tomorrow, there's a lifelong of decline ahead. So I'm making the most of today. Now that's a great tone to set for a marriage, especially on day one. Actually, it's not even day one, it's like day 0.5. He then continues on to thank the guests and telling them what it means to him and his bride that they're there. And then he says this, I'm sure that my dear wife, as I'm now proud to call her, feels the same. Don't you? Well, speak out. I'm your husband. You're supposed to back me up. I suppose I'll have to be patient and give her a few more hours to get used to the new order of things. Like, where did that even come from? And why are there, there's directions? Make sure you speak to Jane nastily. I mean, it doesn't get much better. After saying he's worried about giving the speech, he says the following. Be that as it may, you can take it from me that whatever I do say springs from the heart and is not clutching at platitudes. That's the trouble with platitudes. You may wish to express a feeling simply and sincerely, and it comes out as commonplace, with nothing to indicate the depth of the feeling behind it. Such as when I first said to Jane, I love you. That's why I've never bothered to say it again. Yeah, I get the joke. I get it. It's just such bad taste. And remember, these are wedding speeches. This is the start of your new marriage. There's a story that the groom tells later in the speech that he caught his bride with a book called How to Boil an Egg, which, could be a very funny story to share at a wedding. if it wasn't how it was prefaced. During the time that Jane and I were engaged, it was an episode where I was struck with anxiety about our future married state. It's just framed so icky. She doesn't even know how to boil an egg. How's she gonna cook me a roast dinner on Sundays every week? There's also this great joke. Of course, being different doesn't mean being incompatible, although actually Jane and I are incompatible. I've got the income and Jane is very patable. Honestly, most of the groom speeches aren't actually that bad. It's just a few dry spots and oddly placed jokes. I mean, I don't know, they just felt gross. All in all, not a bad section. Now, as we all know from the previous book, the best man speech has to be the funniest speech of the evening, overflowing with humour. His speech should be light and, as far as possible, filled with humour. From this point, there should be no return to emotional references or serious topics. Nothing serious, nothing sappy. Comedy only. Let's see what Gordon's come up with to kick us off. You've all heard about somebody getting cold feet and not turning up to a wedding. Well, you may be surprised to learn that it almost happened at this wedding, and it was only through very determined coercion that it didn't happen. John had me by the scruff of the neck. Oh, he was getting cold feet, not John. I know it's an honor to be the best man, but to some of us the thought of what can go wrong is frightening. John was asking me, is it the fear of losing the round ring? He had to keep pausing because he was banging my head on the wall. And he didn't actually say round ring. I substituted round for his word that I won't repeat. What word could it be? Oh, could you not say it because it was cuss word?
No more saying cuss words, guys!
What can I say about John that most of you don't already know? Quite a lot, but he wouldn't thank me for it. Classic. Here's a nice little segment we can launch into. Through no fault of his own, John suffered a long spell on the doll. Ooh, this has a nice tone to it. Hey John, remember when you were a broke piece of human garbage? Ooh, that was so funny when you were poor. The atmosphere became distinctly sinister when he held so-called social gatherings at his flat. They always started late at night and a light could still be seen on well into the early hours of the next day. It was all hush-hush. Those who attended were forbidden to speak about it. This was understandable. Yeah, wouldn't want it getting around the neighborhood that I was spending my time with a Tory. He goes on to talk about how John made a fortune selling mops to Inuits in Alaska, which is convenient for you if your friend getting married also sold mops to Inuits in Alaska. John didn't look as though he would ever marry, but we Lance thought it was what he needed. Eventually we managed to drum the message home, and one day he stood looking thoughtfully into the distance and said, "Yes, I think you're right. I should have some sensible young woman to keep me on an even course. Somebody that I have to answer to, if you like. Somebody that I can come home to who'll have my dinner ready. Someone who'll wash up afterwards and do my washing and ironing and do shopping and slave over a hot stove all day and work her fingers to the bone while I put my feet up on the mantelpiece. Yes, my mind is made up." I'm so sorry, Jane. I think it's time I brought Jane into this because this whole affair is about John and Jane, not John and me. Please don't bring Jane into this. I think my evil desire to indulge in slander arose from jealousy. Yes, Jane, jealousy of John, because he's got you. Of all the girls that he's known, you're the one he's chosen. Either that, or out of all the girls he's known, you're the only one that would have him. Oh, sorry, there I go again. Well, that's a bit mean. Jane, you know the saying. Behind every great man, there's a woman doing something or other. This is where you come in. Keep behind John doing whatever it is in the saying. Yeah, you just stick behind John doing whatever it is you guys get up to. Not voting, that's for sure.
Be sure to let me know your opinion.
Now, of course, we can't forget to riz the bridesmaids. You know, we do want to sleep with one of them, surely. And there's plenty of that going around. Here are some great examples to help you out. I have the privilege of speaking on behalf of the bridesmaids. If Jane is today's Cinderella and John is Prince Charming, I'm afraid that the bridesmaids have no chance whatsoever of being the ugly sisters. Oh, get absolutely rizzed. Here's another great example. Talking of a bargain, oh, he was talking about a bargain earlier in the speech. Talking of a bargain, there are some special goodies on display today with a sell-by date far in the future, but none of them will be left on the shelf. I refer to the bridesmaids. Hell yeah, boys, you better get after them. You gotta snatch them up quickly. There's not gonna be any left. Here's one more for you. Thank you, John, for brightening up the day of the bridesmaids with those teasing flatteries of yours. They don't make speeches, so I have to speak for them. Yeah, be sure to remind the bridesmaids that just like all the other women at this wedding, they are not permitted to speak. They must all sit in silence while the men tug each other's dick. But to really make sure they get the message, I'm sure that they would like to make a vocal acknowledgement themselves, but tradition demands that they use a spokesman. That's me, and what a fantastic spokesman they have. You might say he's the best man for the job. Oh. Now, prior to the days of technology, people would call in telemessages to be read aloud if they couldn't attend, and these would usually be read out by the best man at the conclusion of his speech. But the book has some suggestions on some spoof telemessages that you could read out in amongst the real ones. You know, just to throw a couple ones in there.
Add a little bit of spice.
And honestly, that's kind of a funny idea. You know, you could sneak in some fake ones in there, get some laughs. Harmless enough, right? Okay, let's see what comedic gold we have on our hands here. Number 1. Sorry we haven't got you a gift yet. You know how forgettable I am. Happy birthday, love from Alice, and, you know, thingy. Yeah, okay, that's kind of funny. You know, he's forgetful. He doesn't remember that it's a wedding, not his birthday, and, you know, thingy's a silly word. Not too bad. Here's another one. Number 2. Hope your marriage proves more straightforward than ours. See you after recovery from the sex change-up. Okay. Yeah, we're done with those. We'll just move on. At long last, it's time for the extras category. The women. Now, the other speeches in this section are pretty much fine, just other female relatives and friends, so I won't really read those. But I was very intrigued by the first speech, which is for a lady friend of the family, from a feminist viewpoint. Written, of course, by the same man who has written all the previous well-rounded speeches, so I'm sure he'll do great writing a speech from the feminist viewpoint. Now, real quick, as much as I probably agree with a lot of what she, the lady friend of the family, is about to say, I can't help but feel like a wedding speech isn't a place for politics. Like, maybe the speech should be about the couple? I'll read it and then you tell me what you think. I think it fitting that a few things should be said on this occasion from the female viewpoint. I'm not disparaging the comments made by the gentlemen in their speeches, but far from it, because they have been most complimentary to our sex and they've made some flattering observations. I think you ladies will agree that we could listen to that all day. I see what you're doing there. No, it's merely that the men do the speechifying at weddings. Speechifying? That's a cool word. No, it's merely that the men do the speechifying at weddings and the ladies rarely get a look in, or a word in. It's one more example of men being given priority over women. Even with my humble self being invited to participate, it's still 3 men to 1 woman. Yeah, agreed. Let's hope it's only a matter of time before we ladies break even with the men, and the bride and the chief bridesmaids make speeches. Can you imagine a bride standing there in her wedding dress, declaring that she'll still have her night out with the boys every Wednesday and play football on Sundays, and the chief bridesmaids saying how pretty the bridegroom looks? At least they'll have the opportunity to say what they like to a captive audience. Yep, I totally agree with you. Maybe it's time to speak about the couple? Unfortunately, my wedding service was marred by a series of hiccups. Oh no, she's just gonna make it about herself. Anyway, the point I want to... okay, now we're on to the couple. As the unfairness of the male monopoly... nope, still talking about equality. Okay. Bride staggering up the aisle singing, I've got a lovely bunch of coconuts.
A few moments later.
Well, I've had my little say, and now on the lighter side. Okay, now we're going to talk about the couple in question. The years that have passed since the memorable day that I've just told you about have been as happy as I could have wished. The toast to Stan and myself has been fulfilled. Stan and myself? Oh, this speech was just about her. Well, no, she does mention our lovely couple, Jane and John. It's over to you now, Jane and John, to make your married life a happy one. Having the pleasure of knowing you both well, I know in my heart that you will do this. May God's blessing be with you all the way. Wait, that's it? So just to recap, that wedding speech was 95% feminism and 5% happy wishes to the couple. 10 out of 10. Well, that brings us to the end of the book, which is where you'll find some other recommendations for further reading you can do, such as The Best Man's Duties and Wedding Etiquette Properly Explained. Wedding Etiquette Properly Explained? Hey, I have that book! We've also got a list of some other books that look like they would be absolute gems to make videos on in the future, so if you're wanting to see that, be sure to leave a fat comment down below. I'm not really sure what to do with these 2 books now. I mean, it is currently winter in the UK at the moment, so, you know, if I get super desperate, you know, it's getting really cold, I don't have to worry. I've got my warmth right here. Anyway, that's the end. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did make it this far in, make sure to drop a in the comments below. Be sure to stay tuned for any future episodes of the Cam Hall Variety Show. Thank you so much for watching. I hope somebody watching this video either receives the best news of their whole life or the worst news of their day. Gotta keep things fair and balanced. Bye.
Sana